Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for watching my channel. I really deeply appreciate it. I'm out here on the Rainbow Range today, and we're going to be shooting a video on this Luger right here. But it's getting a little hot, a little tiring, so I thought I'd sit down, take a break for a few minutes, and talk with you briefly about Gunmageddon and give you an update on California legislative news. Now, as you may already know, the legislature in California passed a series of anti-gun laws we all called Gunmageddon, and they were signed into law almost completely by our governor, Jerry Brown, whom we affectionately call Moonbeam for obvious reasons. Now, those laws are bad enough, but there's also a proposition that's being proposed that's going to be on the ballot, at least we think so, from Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, and if that proposition passes, it's going to make things even worse. The California Rifle and Pistol Association, along with the National Rifle Association and Gun Owners of California, produced a series of 3 webinars that cover these bills and these legislative bills in detail, and they're actually put on by Michelle & Associates, which is an outstanding law firm that represents the NRA and the California Rifle and Pistol Association. It has for a long, long time, and they're experts in firearms legislation. So I've watched those webinars, and I did a brief video to cover the first webinar, which was about AR-15s, the assault weapons changes. They're not assault weapons, but that's what they call them, and the ghost guns, which is what California calls 80% lowers. And I'll put a link in the description for this video so that you can find that previous one, which we've labeled California Update Gunmageddon Part 1. This is Part 2, and what I'm going to talk about here is the changes in ammunition law based upon California Senate Bill 1235 and what Gavin Newsom wants to do if his proposition changes that and actually gets passed by the voters. Now, if you're not from California and you don't give a hoot about any of this, I get it, but I want to just let you know that this stuff travels around the country. So if you're not from California, you might want to pay attention so you know that what could be heading your direction. California was not always like this. When I was growing up, California was a very conservative state. The Second Amendment was protected here, and our rights were protected here. People moved here from other states, from the East Coast, Northeast mostly, and because they liked the weather, and they brought their political bent with them. And the next thing you know, we have California the way it is today. Now those same policies are moving along with people who are leaving California to places like Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Colorado, and so on, and your state could be next. So it's important that you know what this stuff is so that you can resist it before it starts. So in any case, in order to go over it, I had to make some heavy notes because I watched the webinar, and these firearms laws these ammunition laws are pretty confusing. Now I'm going to go over the 1235, Senate Bill 1235, which is currently law. These things haven't really started to affect anybody yet, and they won't. There's a time frame, but it is signed into law. And then I'll tell you how it will change if Gavin Newsom's proposition is also passed. So currently, under the law as it's been changed, the bill defines ammunition as one or more loaded cartridges consisting of a primer, a case, propellant, and one or more projectiles. Why is that important? Because the whole question has been bandied about, is this going to keep me from buying components to reload ammunition? The answer is no. Reloading components are not covered by this bill, and there are no new restrictions in this bill covering reloading components. So if you're a reloader like I am, you're still going to be able to buy components without having to go through a background check and without having to go through all this nonsense, and you can make all the ammunition you want. Now, if you are thinking that the legislature is not going to attempt to do something with components when they figure this out, I would say you're wrong. That's probably next in line, so we want to be aware of that. This law also extended the straw purchase that it exists with regard to firearms. You can't buy a gun and give it or sell it to somebody who's a prohibited person. Now in California, you cannot buy ammunition and give it to someone who's prohibited from owning firearms. They've extended that law to ammunition. If you're going to sell ammunition, even if you already own a gun store and you're already an FFL and you're already a California licensed dealer, you're going to have to get a new license that also covers ammo as an ammunition vendor in the state of California. Now, if all you're selling is reloading components, you don't need a license for that because reloading components are not covered under this bill. Also, this bill does not cover, this license is not necessary to import ammunition into the state, but there are some restrictions on importation, and I'll go over those for you here in just a couple of minutes. Now, there are some exemptions with this licensing requirement. with certain people, and if you want to know more about those particular exemptions where vendors are concerned, I would suggest you go watch the webinar. I put links to all the webinars on the CRPA website in the description of this video, so you can check out that link. It'll take you to all 3 of them and you can watch them. And that's where you're going to get a little bit more news about what those exemptions are. You may fit into one of those buckets. The other big change for vendors is vendors are no longer going to be allowed to let some ammunition be out there for consumers to pick up and look at. It's going to have to be locked up or secured in a secure location where the only way a customer can get to that ammunition is if they're getting help from a clerk or somebody that works from the store. So that's going to puts a big bunch of financial cost, I think, on vendors, because now they have to buy new cabinets, remodel their store, move stuff around, and so on. But that's the change in the law. Now, these things are not affecting you yet, but they're going to, and when we get to the end of this video, I'll show you the time frames. One time frame is January 1, 2019, and that really applies to purchasers. So if you're going to purchase ammo starting January 2019, then, and that's, again, this stuff all happens because licenses have to be in place and systems have to be built and so on. At that point, you're going to have to complete a background check. And the background check is supposed to only cost you $1. Supposed to. It's also supposed to be very fast and instant almost, because the state's supposed to build a computer system and a programming system and a database and everything, none of which currently exists or has even been thought of or conceived, I don't think. And the State Department of Justice has a horrible track record of doing this stuff, so I won't be surprised if when this all starts, if we're all standing at the counter waiting to buy our ammo because our system has hiccuped, farted, or done whatever it's done, and now it doesn't work and we're standing there waiting for our background check to come back. Don't be surprised if that happens. Now, the $1 fee is contingent upon you owning a firearm in the state of California that is registered already in the state database, and contingent upon you not being a prohibited person where firearms are concerned. And then, like I said, it's supposed to be quick and automated and like that. Supposed to be being the operative word. Now, if you just happen to be one of those people that does not own a gun in the state of California that happens to be registered and in the database, or maybe you don't even live in California, you want to come here to visit and shoot while you're here, there's a whole separate process you got to go through in order to buy ammo. You have to complete a document that has similar information that you needed to complete as a DROS, a dealer record of sale. And once you've done that, then you have to pay a fee which can be as high as the current DROS fee, which currently right now when you're buying a gun, the dealer record of sale fee is $19. But it could go up. And the only limit is however high that fee is. So you could buy 1 box of ammo for $20 and have to spend $19 on the background check. You know what this is all about, frankly, in my humble opinion? Because of the Supreme Court decisions in Heller and McDonald, the state of California cannot take your guns away illegally. They can't unless Hillary Clinton becomes elected, and then we don't know what's going to happen there. But they can't do that. What they can do is they can make it hard for you to buy new guns by restricting them with a handgun roster. They can make it difficult for you to own defensive rifles by limiting your AR-15 and defensive rifles to death so that they are absolutely useless as defensive rifles in the state. And they can make it really difficult for you to have ammunition. You got the gun, but without ammo, and by making the guns really difficult to get and so on and expensive and so on, they're basically restricting your Second Amendment right in a different way. And that's essentially what they're doing. Now, there are a host of exemptions to these laws, and I'm going to show you them to you now on the screen so you can see them, because they cover most of these things. And there are some changes, and where there's changes, I'll show them to you again. If you're a California licensed firearms dealer, or a licensed federal firearms dealer, or a federally licensed firearms ammunition manufacturer or importer, or you're a licensed ammo vendor in the state, or a CNR, curio and relic collector, and you happen to also have a certificate of eligibility, you got to have both, or you're law enforcement, or you're in a hunting club, you're attending a hunting club or a target range, and all you're going to do is buy ammo that you're going to shoot that day at that moment on the range and burn it all up, then you don't have a background check. If you hold a dangerous weapons permit, or you're a person with a certificate of eligibility, and there's a bunch of other ones too. Now keep in mind, I've listed these in a general fashion, but there are specific limitations within each one of these. So if you fall into one of these categories and you want to know whether you're exempt, make sure that you're talking to an attorney who understands California law so they can ensure that you're actually following the law and you don't get yourself fined, arrested, or whatever. Now, I'll show you those limitations or those exemptions again where they apply. There's several places where they do come into effect. I just don't want to bore you to death with them. At any time, when you're making a purchase, you've got to provide, each and every time you have to provide this information to the California Department of Justice. So if you buy a box of ammo today and you go buy a box of ammo tomorrow, you're going to have to do it again every time. It's supposed to be an automated system, computerized system, but this is pretty draconian stuff. I mean, it reminds me of George Orwell's 1984 a little bit. But let me put them up on the screen for you so you can see them. You're going to have to provide your full name, driver's license information, the date that you purchased the ammunition, the brand, type, and amount of ammunition you transferred. That's just a way for them to figure out what kind of guns you have, I think. The name of the salesperson, your full residential address and phone number, and your date of birth. Now, that's amazing to me, but the Department of Justice is supposed to safeguard this ammunition, or I'm not, safeguard this information rather, and only hold it for 2 years. So they're supposed to protect the information from getting out. They're only supposed to keep it for 2 years. Now, if you believe that they're only going to have it for 2 years, I got some swampland in Florida I'd like to sell you as vacation property, because there's no way. Once they get the information, if they don't keep it, I'll be astounded. So I think once they've got it, they've got it. But legally, they're only supposed to have it for 2 years. Also, the vendor is not supposed to use this information for anything other than providing it to law enforcement if there's an active duty, or if there's an active investigation rather, and if there's, a warrant or subpoena or whatever. Now, that's, the vendor still got the information, so I don't know how they safeguard it, but that's what they're supposed to be. The same exemptions I showed you before on the screen apply here, so I'm not going to show them to you again. I will later because they changed a little bit. Now, purchases have to be face-to-face, so you can't call them and have them mail it to you. You can't order it on the internet and have it mailed to you. You got to go buy the ammunition face-to-face with the vendor, where they're looking at you, you're looking at them, and you're actually filling out the paperwork and handing them ID and all that kind of stuff. You can buy ammunition still under this law from a retailer online or mail order or whatever, but they have to send it to a California licensed ammunition vendor. They cannot send it directly to you. And then when it gets to that ammunition vendor, then the vendor has to see you face to face, and you have to go through all this nonsense and the background check and all that. And then the vendor can also charge you an additional $10 for their time for doing this. So now you've ordered the ammo, you've paid for the shipping, you paid for the background check, you paid for the vendor's time. And if you don't have a gun registered in the state of California, the background check's going to cost you up to $19. I mean, all they're doing is pricing people out of the market. They're pricing the Second Amendment right people out of the Second Amendment market, and that's what they're trying to do. It's interesting, though, as you'll see as we go along, they almost have created a black market for ammunition, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Now, again, those exemptions still exist, but I'll show them to you when we get to that point. Private sales of ammunition will be restricted, so you won't be able to sell ammunition to your buddy or your kids or whatever. Now, here's the interesting part about that. You can't sell ammunition to someone, but there's no restriction on you giving it to them. Okay, so what are people going to do? Come on now, seriously? I can't sell it, but I can give it to you. So I give you the ammunition today. Here's your case of shotgun ammunition. Here's a case of shotgun ammunition. I got some extra, I figured to give it to you. Or here's 5 cases, or here's whatever. And then 2 weeks from now, you and I are having coffee, and you say, oh, hey, by the way, Joel, you know that money that I owed you from last year? I just wanted to pay you that money I owed you from last year, and here it is. Right? I mean, so what is that? That's a black market deal, right, isn't it? And how are they going to catch anybody doing that? The fact is they're not. I mean, it is what it is, right? But essentially they've said you can't sell it, but you can give it to someone if you want to, as long as that person is not a prohibited person who cannot own or possess a gun or ammunition. Now, likewise, this is another one that's like that. There's a ban on importation into the state by California residents. Okay, now there's some people that are exempt, and I'll go over those in a minute, but you can't go to another state and legally buy ammunition there and then bring it back to the state of California. You can buy ammunition in California, go to another state, and then bring that same ammunition back if you went on a hunting trip or something, but I suggest you might want to have a receipt with you so you don't get harangued by law enforcement in California when you come back. Here's the interesting part. This does not apply to non-California residents. So somebody who lives in Arizona, Nevada, whatever, can buy as much ammo as they want over there and bring it into California. And nobody's going to say anything because there's no restriction on them doing so. And when they get here, they can't sell it to you, but they can give it to you. And you can pay them back for that, money they lent you 3 months ago later on. Jeez. So there's going to be a huge black market in ammunition. That's my prediction. I'm not suggesting you do any of these things. So if you're the California Department of Justice watching my video, I am not suggesting illegal activity. I'm pointing out that this bill is stupid. It's stupid in the first place just because the laws are terribly restrictive. As far as I'm concerned, every last one of them is unconstitutional. But they're also written in a way that you, the California government, are creating a black market. You're forcing honest, law-abiding citizens to do things underhanded in order to be able to exercise a constitutional right. Now, there are exemptions to this, and I told you I'd show them to you when they change, so here they are again. These exemptions are pretty much the same. The only difference is that I could find is that it also includes hunters or competitive shooters when they are out of state competing or out of state hunting and they want to bring some of that ammo home. Now, here's the restriction. They can't bring more than 50 rounds, and it has to be the same caliber as the gun they were using to go hunt or the gun they were using with which to compete. So 50 rounds only, and the ammunition has to be the same as that gun they were using, and that's it. And then we'll get into the changes as far as what happens if Newsom passes. If Newsom passes, now kind of all bets are off, because Gavin Newsom has written this proposition, which frankly just makes SB 1235 worse if it passes. SB 1235 is bad, but Gavin Newsom's proposition is worse. So if you're in California, please vote no on that thing. Some of the provisions of the law will be the same, some will not. For example, in order to purchase ammunition, rather than what I described a minute ago, you'll have to fill out and sign a form including all of your personal information, which we'll put up on the screen for you, the list that is part of that. You pretty much saw it before. The information will be kept by the DOJ indefinitely. Also, vendors can use the information for whatever they want, rather than being restricted to only providing it to law enforcement. They can use it for whatever they want as long as they have your permission. So, you get an unscrupulous vendor who in the paperwork puts in something else for you to sign. You don't know what you signed, and now you just gave them your permission, and they're using it to market to you or sell it to somebody or whatever. So that's in Gavin Newsom's bill. Also, the background checks are extremely confusing in Gavin Newsom's proposition as far as I could determine. The only people who can meet the background check, it appears, are people who have a firearm registered in the state of California, or people with a certificate of eligibility, or if you don't have either one of those, you're going to have to do the single ammunition purchase I'd mentioned before. That's the DROS thing where you pay the extra fee. You can get ammo if you're purchasing a gun at the time and you're going to buy ammo with the gun. And the exemptions are different. Now they're similar, they're a little different. For example, in the previous, with the bill, with SB 1235, there's an exemption for law enforcement. With Gavin Newsom's bill, there's an exemption for law enforcement only if that law enforcement officer has a letter from the head of his or her agency stating that they are authorized to buy ammunition without having to go through a background check. I'm going to put the cops through a background check. It's the cops who do the background checks. Doesn't make any sense. All right, vendors. If you're a California firearms dealer, you would not have to get an additional license. That's one positive. But the negative is that you're going to have a mandatory theft loss reporting requirement under Gavin Newsom's bill. That means if one round of ammunition is missing from a box, or if one round of ammunition goes missing, you are going to be required as a vendor to provide that information and report that information on whatever documents they come up with to local law enforcement within a time period. Now, as if as a California firearms dealer, you don't already have an inventory requirement that is obnoxious. I've seen the ATFE go through firearms dealers' inventory and pick it apart and just ding the snot out of them. I mean, what are they going to do now if they find a round missing out of your inventory somewhere and you didn't report it? But anyway, that's the law. And there are a whole bunch of other screwy things in that bill. By the way, Gavin Newsom's proposition doesn't just cover ammunition. It covers a whole bunch of other stuff in Gunmageddon and makes it all worse too. I'm just talking about ammunition today because that's what the subject of this particular video is SB 1235, the ammunition restrictions. Now here's the time frames. I'll put them up on the screen for you. The law goes on the books. I mean, it's already on the books. It's been signed, but it goes into effect January 1, 2017. That's the SB 1235. January 1, 2017. Vendors have to have their license in place in order to sell by January 1, 2018, and then a lot of the laws, purchases and requirements and like that really don't affect you and me as ammunition purchasers until January 1, 2019. So we have some time to kind of figure this out. Now, as I said, SB 1235 is really, really bad. Gavin Newsom's proposition, which is going to be on the ballot, it looks like November 8th or whenever the election is even worse. So please, 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 please oppose that. I want to remind you that in California, there are between 8 and 12 million gun owners in the state. And if we could just get a quarter of them to vote a strong Second Amendment ballot or to get involved in general, we could change the state and we could take our Second Amendment back and we could change these laws. Now, absent that, I will tell you there are two people running for president. There's Donald Trump and there's Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton has already said that one of her litmus tests for Supreme Court justices is going to be a willingness to destroy the Second Amendment, a willingness to read the Heller and McDonald decisions in a way that Justice Scalia never intended, and a willingness to do everything possible to diminish, if not destroy, the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. Now, on the other hand, Donald Trump, who I must admit was not my first choice for president, but he's the only choice I got now, so I'm going to vote for him and support him and recommend that you do the same. Donald Trump has put out a list of the justices he would select from in order to nominate justices to the Supreme Court. And by all reports, if he picks any of those people on that list and any of those people end up on the court, we have a very strong Second Amendment advocate then on the court. And it may be 2 or 3 or even 4 justices that the next president gets to nominate. So the whole future of our rights stands in the balance where this election is concerned. So please don't get discouraged. Get out there and vote. And I'm going to urge you to vote for Donald Trump. If that happens and he's true to his word and he actually gets those people on the Supreme Court, then there's going to be a tremendous number of lawsuits, and I'm going to predict an awful lot of victories in the Supreme Court for the Second Amendment. Our Second Amendment and our rights are at stake here. And that's what we can do about it at the moment. Now, we can also do things that are illegal. I'm not going to suggest any of those, okay? So as a YouTuber and a public person, kind of, I can't suggest that we do illegal things. I'm going to suggest that we follow the law, even if it's unconstitutional. But you do as you wish. I just cannot make those kind of suggestions. I will tell you that the California Rifle and Pistol Association, the NRA, and Gun Owners of California are 3 outstanding organizations that are spending a lot of money on this stuff. All 3 of those organizations have full-time staff here in California working in Sacramento to fight these laws and to fight local ordinances and so on. So I urge you, please join the National Rifle Association. I'll put a link right here for you to do that. I urge you also join the California Rifle and Pistol Association if you're in the state of California, and certainly join Gun Owners of America. Sam Paredes, whom I've met a number of times, is a full-time lobbyist up in Sacramento. He does a fabulous job, and that organization needs your help as well. Thank you very much for watching my channel. Have a great week. I really appreciate the fact that you watch. Please like, subscribe, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and on the blog. We got a lot of stuff there for you as well. And please do join NRA. Have a wonderful week. Oh, and I should tell you, I do have a link to all 3 webinars in there, and I will do a follow-up here in the next couple weeks on the last webinar, so I'll get you clued in on that one as well before we get too far down the road. Once again, thank you. Have a wonderful week, and be safe.